following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown! And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
What a night it was in Tempe, for better and for worse, and we'll be breaking it down for the next hour here in Cougar Nation. We were both there. We were on the sidelines for that chaos at the end of that football game, and there's a lot of thoughts, and we're going to share them all for this next hour. But this show's for you, Cougar Nation. We want to get your thoughts as well on that game. 801-575-8255. And also, we want your thoughts on this question. Do you want to see a rematch, BYU and Arizona State? Do you want to see these two teams who have a history together back in the WAC reunite for a Big 12 championship? BYU needs some help to get there. We'll break this all down, Mitch, but can't think of a better show to just figure out and get all the feelings and emotions out from such a crazy game down in Tempe.
Yeah, BYU now 9-2 on the season, 6-2 in Big 12 play after falling to Arizona State 28-23 in Tempe. Let's dive in, Matt, to our takeaways.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
I got to say, Matt, that post-game, or well, not really post-game, but the end of the game, the storming of the field, that was wild. We were both there on the field, saw that, and no student, mind you, that ran onto that field from ASU had any idea that 1 second was possibly going to go on the clock. They were all floored when media members were telling them, hey, you got to get off the field. Cam Scadaboo's telling them to get off the field. They had no comprehension that was possible. That was a wild scene in Tempe, and it was disappointing that BYU came up short. My takeaway number one from that game, though, Matt, with how much was on the line in that contest and being one of the biggest games of the Kalani Sitake era and maybe for BYU football in the 21st century, and they just flat out no-showed in the first half. No-showed. That was discouraging. 21-3, they were down. I couldn't believe it. I was so confident going into that game that BYU was going to put their best foot forward. And you could say in the second half they did in stretches. But I just thought that floored me how BYU lacked any sort of physicality in the first half. You can't tell me that Arizona State is that much better than BYU. Like, we've been watching these games throughout the entire course of the season. BYU's a really good football team. Arizona State's a good football team. But the way that BYU showed up in that first 30 minutes, man, they dug themselves too big of a hole. And it proved too big because they couldn't get back and ultimately get back out on top and win this game. That was just really discouraging to me how they just showed up flat.
Very surprising, too, to hear players and coaches today talk about how great of a week of practice they had last week. One of the best weeks of practice they ever had, and yet that whole first half, they were entirely flat. I'm going to give you a positive takeaway, though, Mitch. I came away very impressed with this team's grit, their resilience, their maturity. That was a tough environment. And those were difficult conditions to come back in, considering the way Arizona State was running the football in that first half, where Scadaboo had 3 touchdowns and almost 100 yards rushing in the first half. For them to dig deep, find a way back, and to have 2 separate opportunities to win that football game, I thought that was really impressive. Now, there were way too many mistakes, and we'll get to this later, to have overcome that 21-3 deficit. But other BYU teams, I think, in this situation would have folded. And for them to fight back the way that they did, if they get an opportunity to go to the championship game, and I don't know if they will, but if they do, I think they would win that game. I think they are really battle-tested. Unfortunately, you just can't play one half of bad football and expect to win these games, and that's what cost them.
And when you're vying for a championship in a power conference league or any conference championship at this point of the season, you've got to play a full 60 minutes. And these teams are too good in the Big 12 to where you take a half off or don't show up in a half, you're going to get exposed, and it's going to be too big of a hole. And, BYU's got Houston coming up this Saturday night at 8:15 to close out the regular season. BYU is going to be a sizable favorite against Houston, but still, you have a no-show and a half. That could get real interesting quick, and we've seen that against Kansas, and we saw it this past weekend against Arizona State. Another takeaway from me, Matt, bring the tempo offensively. BYU just operates at a higher level on the offense with more tempo. Coming into the game, they were 105th nationally in plays per game, so a slower-paced team. Arizona State was more middle of the pack, 55th nationally coming into the game. But BYU, you just see the difference in how they knew they had to level up that tempo because they had such a big hole. The offense was operating at a much higher level. It felt like Jake Retzlaff was a lot more comfortable. They had 20 points in the second half, and that was notable because from the end of the UCF game, fourth quarter, Utah, Kansas, first half against Arizona State, it's about 11 quarters. BYU had, 3 touchdowns in that stretch? And then in the second half against ASU, they had 3 touchdowns. Maybe it's just easy to point to the tempo. Maybe ASU took a little bit of the foot off the gas a bit. But I thought BYU's offense looked a lot better in that second half with a little more tempo.
Aaron Roderick said this a lot this season, Mitch, that Jake is probably the best 2-minute quarterback he's ever coached. Yeah. Today, he said this is the best 2-minute offense I've ever coached. Utilize that then. Yeah. That needs to be the standard. If that's what's going to put points on the board, then run that up tempo because it felt like the floodgates finally opened after such a long lull, and it was because of the tempo offensively. Another one of my takeaways, Mitch, is Jake is missing too many opportunities to win football games, specifically in his intermediate to deep passes. The Utah game, the Kansas game, and this game, numerous throws missed that would have changed the football game. You go back to that Kansas game. He had Darius running a post. He hits that. It's an easy touchdown. They probably win that football game. In this game, in the second half alone, Jake played good football in the second half. He played his best football in weeks in the second half, but he could have hit JoJo Phillips for what would have been a walk-in touchdown. We were on the field at that point in the fourth quarter. The visitors let us go down to the field and enjoy some of the fourth quarter, which is fun to get up close. And on a game like this one where the fans rush the field, it gets a little crazy. But that is an easy throw to make. There was no one around. Just fit it in there and get it to JoJo. Couldn't do it. And there were other throws in this. That his last interception was a missed throw. Hit Darius Lassiter accurately, and he gets some yards after the catch, and who knows what happens. There's just Jake has done a lot of great things this year. I think he has far exceeded most people's expectations.
Because the expectations were very low.
Fair.
Very low.
They were low for sure. I mean,
but he's got 9 wins. I mean, that
Jake, I think, has earned all of our respect, and he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback because a great quarterback would have made some of these throws, and you win those football games. Jake's got to find a way because at the start of the year, think about that long touchdown pass to Darius against Baylor, the long touchdown pass to Joe. He was hitting these throws to start the year. He hasn't been hitting them the last couple of weeks, and that's hurt this offense.
BYU, again, falls to Arizona State 28-23. This was Kalani Sitake after that deep hole that BYU put themselves in.
I think when you put yourself in the hole too much, it's going to be hard to crawl out of it, especially against really quality teams like Arizona State. And we found that out. It's a tough lesson to learn, but give them credit. They deserve to win. They got it, and we have to learn from this and get better.
They do have to get better from this, and it's got to be something that's learned quick because BYU still has a path to the Big 12 championship, and that's why we asked on today's question for Cougar Nation, would you want to see a BYU versus Arizona State rematch in the Big 12 championship? The Cougars need to obviously win their game over the Cougars in red, Houston. Then they need help from either Arizona to knock off Arizona State or Iowa State falls to Kansas State. So it's in play. It's possible there, and BYU maybe could get a rematch against the Sun Devils. Let's take our first time out. This show is sponsored by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit us online at cbutah.com. We'll get to your calls. We see some people loaded up on the phone lines. We'll get to your calls and your texts next here on Cougar Nation.
Coming
many things affect your life as much as slow traffic and bad weather. Listen tomorrow morning for traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back in. It's Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte. This show's for you, Cougar fans. 801-575-8255. You can chime in on the question of the day. Do you want a rematch against the Sun Devils, or you can just share any general thoughts from a tough defeat down in the desert? Let's get out to the phone line. Grant from Payson. What do you got for us tonight, Grant?
Hey, guys. I just wanted to kind of chime in. I don't know what the rest of the Cougar Nation's going to have to say. I just wanted to try and make sure we reframe and understand. I know that there's some scenarios, and it's more likely than not that we're going to kick off against Houston, and there's a good chance that we are playing for something, but there's a chance that we're not. And I think we just need to understand, and it's hard after going 9-0 to reframe your ideas of how the season is going to end, because we all pretty much all bought our tickets to Arlington. But I think it's important to understand the senior class has kind of laid the foundation after a tough first year in the Big 12 where we didn't even know if we were going to be competitive or not long term. That they've laid a foundation. We're not a doormat, and we're going to be competitive. We're not just going to be a tough out. We're going to compete for championships. And I just want to, hope that we all show up. I know it's going to be a packed house at LaVille Stadium, and it's going to be rowdy. I just want us to all, cheer on these seniors, cheer on this team, celebrate, regardless of other outcomes, and just take the season for what it is and hope that we can all rally around the team and the coaching staff going forward, get that Kalani extension I've been hoping for, and then, hopefully more than anything, get the boosters activated like they do for basketball, because I think the Arizona State game, as tough as it is, exposed a lot of the weak spots and the soft spots of our team that need to be shored up if we want to stay where we're at long term. And so that's what I really wanted to call in and talk about is hope that we, hope for the best case scenario, because it is, there's a good chance that we are playing for something, but we could not. And I think we all just need to, it's a tough way to lose, but I just want to hope that we have a positive outlook and regardless of outcome on Saturday, and we just all have a good time and support the team long term.
Thanks for the call, Grant. I appreciate that. I always like the, glass half full outlook, because honestly, I think there's a lot to like still about BYU football going forward. We were kind of talking before the show when we kind of had a way too early look at 2025, and you're going to lose a lot of guys, especially on the defensive line. That senior night class this Saturday, 20 players expected to be honored, and a lot of talent on the defensive line, but there's a lot returning next season. And if you can supplement that with that foundation of players that understand this culture that Kalani's built, pair that up with some key transfer impact players, maybe get a few freshmen that can come in and make a difference in year one, this could be another good football team next year. I think what's so difficult, though, is that as we see in the Big 12, more than any other conference in the power leagues, this one is so volatile where from year to year, you can't just assume like you're set. You're at the top of the hierarchy. And that's going to be the challenge for BYU going forward, to try to be in the spot. And look, they still got a chance to get to the Big 12 championship game. Not all is lost, but I think that you've kind of stumbled and missed an opportunity to make it clear that you are one of the best teams in college football. Because at 9-0, everything was in front of BYU. You're talking the number 3 seed in the playoff, and now you're really trying to find yourself again. And that's unfortunate because you felt like you'd already moved well past that and that you already had established who you were as a team. And Kalani noted last week that they wanted to find their identity at Arizona State, and that was a missed opportunity. But the future of BYU football is still in good hands. It's just you want to capitalize. When you get these moments, you got to deliver. And let's hope that BYU can have some things break their way and they can get to Arlington and get in that Big 12 title.
You don't get them as often as you think.
No.
Look at what happened to the team up the street from us here in Salt Lake City. They were the preseason favorites here. Felt like they were going to come in with an experienced group and run the league, and they're one of the worst teams in the league. And they've been snake-bitten by injuries, but it does not go the way you think it's always going to go. And I think two things can be true here, Mitch. We can all appreciate that this has been a really good season with the potential for more. Let's see what happens.
For sure.
If they don't get to the Big 12 championship game, I don't think you can call it a great season, but a really good high-end football season. But knowing that if you had at the very least, just won your home games, you'd be playing for a Big 12 championship. That is hard to swallow.
Well, what worries me is that BYU's nowhere near their best right now. They're struggling. They're regressing as they head into the final week of the season. If you played the way you did against, say, UCF a couple weeks ago against ASU, what can you say? Like, ASU just beat you. You played a great game, but you just got beat. That wasn't the case, though. Like, you didn't show up in the first half. And, it's been leaked out there, the audio, and we're not going to get into all that. But, of some of the halftime speeches and things like that, maybe that ignited, maybe that was the key that ignited the fire. I don't know. But the thing is that if you need that, like, what's the deal here? Like, you had everything in front of you, and you just came out flat.
Yeah.
That's not good. And that's not a good sign that this team is, built to go into a Big 12 title, whoever it may be, against Arizona State, Colorado, K-State, Iowa State. There's so many scenarios still that gives you confidence they're going to go into that spot and win. And I think, we had a question a few weeks back of, getting this national undefeated start. Does it worry you? Because I think all of Cougar fans, they have this syndrome where it's just, okay, we're having this amazing ride. When's the collapse going to happen? Look, I understand you, Cougar Nation. We hear you. We understand what it's like. And, look, I think BYU football's got better days ahead, but just you want to seize this opportunity. Again, hopefully they have a few things break their way to get, into Arlington and just 60 minutes away from potentially a college football playoff bid. Let's get back out to the phone line. Shep from West Jordan. You want to chime in about the predictability of the offense? Is that what you want to talk about, Shep?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just want to hear your guys' comments on, there was an interview with the quarterback Levitt from ASU, and he said, I have a game plan. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I watched some film, and he laughed about it. I'm not going to tell you reporters about it, but I know how to attack this team and beat them. And so I guess my question to you all is I'm a season ticket holder. I sit up in the fans with my daughter, and I can sit there and they all line up. And he's talking about our defense,
sure.
But on our offense even, I tell my daughter, we are going to do this. And they do it exactly the way I call it out 15 seconds before the ball is snapped. Like, are we that predictable? And does there need to be a change with that? Those are the kind of problems deals that I have a problem with is, man, we just need to be, as the season progresses, if you're 9-0, you have to continue to innovate, change things up so we're not so predictable. I'd just love to hear your comments about that.
Thanks for the call, Shep. I do think there's an element of some predictability here, but as the season has gone along, at the end of the day, I don't want to get too coach speak here, but it's becoming clear to me the failures of the offense are on the players. There's good play calls being called, Mitch, during these last 3 games that aren't being executed. I could point to 5 plays in this Arizona State game where the right play was called and the players did not execute, and the play was there to be made. Good throws need to be had. Open holes for running backs. Running backs hit the correct holes. Catch the football. Jerry Solicitor's had a couple drops the last couple weeks. Catch the football. When the ball is delivered properly, JoJo Phillips had would have been a nice 30-yard touchdown strike in that second half. Right through the hands. I don't know how you can't pin that on anyone but the players. And if the players are making plays consistently, I don't think we're even having this conversation because I think you're undefeated. There were that many plays left on the field. And with that being said, I do think at times the offense is too predictable. I don't like personnel packages and subbing all the time and looking at the analytics sheet to say we're at this point in the field. This is what the odds say. This is what we need to do. I wish there was a little more gut, a little more feel. But at the end of the day, the shortcomings of this offense have been lack of execution from the players.
On the defensive side, only 1 sack in the last 3 weeks, and that kind of makes me wonder, have they been figured out at times? Because, man, they started out so strong with creating the havoc, the sacks, the TFLs. The interceptions are still holding up. But, they're not getting home to these quarterbacks. And, look, Sam Levitt's a good quarterback, and they faced some good QBs this year, but that's been a little bit worrisome. I do think that, maybe you wonder, too, if the personnel just kind of hit its ceiling. Like, this is who they are, and it's part of that where they got to continue to improve that depth personnel-wise in building out this roster going forward. We'll get to more of your calls coming up next. News, traffic, and weather next. It's Cougar Nation here on KSL News Radio.
Be ready for BYU Game Day? Download the KSL News Radio app to stream BYU games, plus breaking news during the week. That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Welcome back into Cougar Nation here on KSL News Radio, powered by KSL Sports. If you missed any part of our show, subscribe to the podcast. Just search Cougar Nation wherever you get your podcast or go on the KSL Sports app. We'll be holding this thing down, too, Monday nights during the BYU basketball season. So even though football might be nearing an end, we will be doing this, taking your phone calls during the BYU basketball season. Big week coming up for Cougar Hoops. Thursday night, they've got Ole Miss, number 23 Ole Miss, on Thursday down in San Diego. And then either Purdue or NC State on Friday in the multi-team event. So we'll start to learn some actual, data points, some real tangible opponents for Kevin Young's squad coming up this week. So huge week in BYU sports. We got Cougar Hoops on Thanksgiving, and then Saturday night BYU football comes on the airwaves. 6 o'clock extended pregame. BYU in Houston, 8:15 kick here on KSL and on ESPN. But now it's time for Trending Up and Trending Down.
Cougar Nation, trending. What's trending up and what's trending down this football season?
Let's start with the negatives. Let's just get the negatives out of the way. Let's get the negatives out of the way. Get the negatives out of the way, and then we can turn the page to something positive. Negative for me, I've already touched on this, but I need to repeat it. Jake Retzlaff's long ball accuracy is going in the wrong direction, Mitch. Sometimes, when you're reading off a Google sheet, things can go awry. Just like this BYU football season, it's gone awry a little bit.
You read off that play sheet, it can go awry. It can go sideways a little bit.
His long ball accuracy is going down, and I firmly believe if he hits on a couple of these in the last 2 weeks, they win those games. Everything that went wrong, if you just connect on some very obvious, open, deep ball passes, you win these games. Like, I fully believe if he hits JoJo Phillips with a minute to go and they take the lead, that they win that football game. Arizona State could not kick a field goal, and they could also not play up tempo. Like, Sam Levitt is a fine quarterback, but I wasn't that blown away by Sam Levitt in that game. I was completely blown away by Cam Scadaboo. I think he's the best running back in the conference. But Jake, you got to hit these. When these opportunities, they only open 2 or 3 times a game, Mitch. The quarterbacks that can hit those when they are there, they are the best quarterbacks in college football, and those teams win a lot of football games. And Jake and this offense, they have been missing on those explosive plays, and it's hurt them the past couple weeks.
You know what gives me hope for Jake and this BYU offense? The leaps he made from last year to this year were significant. If he can make that sort of jump between now and next year at this time, could he be good enough to be an all Big 12 quarterback? Because you look at the league at large, potentially in 2025, and I know there's still a lot of football left to be played, but you're always kind of thinking of the future. Jake could be one of the, quarterbacks that's viewed as one of the top guys in the league. He'll get a lot of attention. We already know that the nation is, try to gobble up the BYU story quick, and then they spit it out as quick as possible. And this season's like, oh, you lost Kansas. We're done with you. See you later, BYU. We'll take all the national interviews we can get. We'll use all that content we can, but then we'll be done with you the moment you lose a game. But still, I hope to see that sort of jump again from Jake. Still got a long way to go, and see what he becomes, because it was promising how much progress he made this season. Look, still football to be played, but you want to continue to see growth again. What's trending down for me is just the chance of a special season, because you start 9-0. I mean, those were some of the great teams in BYU history have started 9-0. 79 went undefeated in the regular season. 84 won a national title. 2001 they started 12-0. 2020 was one of the best teams in college football before a impromptu game on a moment's notice. That was the only way they lost, and that was by 2 yards. So that's a little bit discouraging to have that great of a start and to feel like you're falling you're stumbling to the finish line. and hopefully they can get this thing right this week. And BYU is the much better team against Houston. Houston, though, is interesting because they can't score a lick, but defensively they can, pitch some games where it's 16-10, and they've won those games, and they've beat some good teams. Kansas State, they took them down. TCU's been playing some good football this year. They took them down. So Houston is capable of springing an upset. That's just what the Big 12 is. Anyone can do that, but BYU's got to finish the job this week. Trending up for me, though, Keelan Marion. I thought Keelan Marion had a really good game last Saturday in Tempe, particularly on the jet sweeps. 5 carries, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns. Keelan Marion, a big factor in jet sweep action in this BYU offense.
Keelan's been nice. Trending up for me, I like BYU's depth on the defensive side of the football right now. Harrison Taggart goes out, and I thought that would have been a devastating blow. He's the leading tackler on the team. He is a weapon when it comes to run defense, and I do think they missed him a little bit in the first half, but I thought Miles Hall played well. He's someone who was not a liability, and I think we've seen that in previous years where if a certain somebody goes down, then it becomes a liability. That was not the case with Miles Hall. And then the safety room, too. Now, there was a really blown play in that second half that hurt BYU, and Micah Harper didn't look like he knew what he was doing when they gave up the 60-yard touchdown pass. But outside of that, I thought Talon Alfrey came in and made some plays in the fourth quarter. Ethan Slade has been seeing some time. Raider Tamouni has taken a big step forward. So I like the depth of this defense.
I like that you bring up Miles Hall because he's in the same mold as Glasker, where he was a high school wide receiver, high school safety, moved up a little bit in the box at the tail end of his senior year at high school, at Skyline High School. Really good athlete. He's got a lot of speed. He'll be a good player for BYU. It's funny, too. He has a revolving number every single week. If you notice, against Kansas, he was 46. Against ASU, he was 31. He just has a revolving number because his initial number, I believe, is 2 other players have it, and he wasn't really factored much into kind of the conversation as far as being someone that contributes this year, and he was also on special teams, so they just kind of always give him a random number based on who's available and who's not. Kind of like a kind of a side note to highlight how he really wasn't in the plans, yet he's inserted into the lineup because you got Sione Moa banged up. He did suit up last week, but not full strength. And then Sialia Serra banged up as well. So it's very thin at Mike linebacker, and he's basically your 4th-string guy and doing a nice job at that spot.
Let's get to some text, Mitch, and we can get to your calls as well. 801-575-8255 if you want to chime in on the BYU-Arizona State game and a potential rematch. One texter, I want to get your thoughts on this. When answering the question, do you want a rematch? We had a family that went to the Arizona game, and their fans were atrocious. Such foul mouths, foul drinking, foul behavior everywhere. They will never attend another game against Arizona State unless it is at LaVell Edwards Stadium. They've never been treated so badly as a visiting guest. Texas and Notre Dame and all those teams were so much more accommodating. Arizona State should be ashamed of themselves.
I warned BYU fans at the hotel, the lobby at my hotel. There were a bunch of Arizona State fans. The hotel I was staying at was basically across the street from the stadium. And the day before the game, I saw some BYU fans. We were talking in the lobby. And these ASU fans joined a few beverages on that Friday night as well. Said some, not mean things, but just some smack talk to BYU fans. Not in the friendliest crowd. And I turned to the BYU fans. I said, this is going to be ugly for you guys. Just brace for the worst, because it feels like...
And it was at its worst.
Anytime BYU goes to these old Pac-12 venues, it ends up being some chant to BYU, USC, Oregon. You go up to Salt Lake. There was a cheerleader gets a water ball thrown at her. This game, you saw the sideshow antics, the halftime speech being recorded. We saw the fans chanting to BYU section on the field. I mean, it was
pretty low class.
We couldn't air any of it on this show.
No.
And, I don't know why that is. Why out west do these schools just hate BYU?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I know that once upon a time Sports Illustrated said BYU the most hated team in America, but why? Why are they still so hated? Like, if ASU rolls into Provo next week, if they did, hypothetically, They'd get the same treatment. They get the ice cream. They get the chance to go toward the press box.
I would start a petition to withhold the ice cream after what we saw in Tempe.
But they don't. BYU takes the higher ground. Like, why do they hate BYU so bad? And then you go, well, it's just religion. Is that what it is?
It has to be. You can't.
There's no other reason to hate
You can't draw
them.
up any other conclusion.
Like, why would you hate Kalani?
I don't know.
Why would you hate Jake Retzloff? I don't even know. Like, really, BYU's not a team that you can, like, oh, I hate them. It's not like Ohio State where they're just always winning, or Georgia, or Bama. Like, yeah, you hate them because they're always winning. BYU's just been this great story, and ASU's just like them. Great stories emerging out of nowhere. Why do you hate BYU? You haven't played in Tempe in 27 years. Before, like, 80% of those people that stormed the field were born. Like, why do you hate BYU? I don't get it. It just will never make sense to me why these schools, particularly out west, because I've gone to Stillwater. I've gone to Orlando. I don't know. Orlando might have had some stuff. But, like, the Midwest.
But not like this.
It's not happening.
This was pretty next level. We have seen and been a part of quite a few field stormings in our fandoms and our time as media members. This one felt different. There was a concerted effort to swarm the BYU players and coaches.
Yep.
There was a player arrested right in front of us.
Fan was arrested.
Thank you. Yes, not a player. Sorry,
no
a fan.
players were arrested.
No players were. The BYU players, tip of the cap to them. They behaved themselves. It was
well after Chase Roberts' final play, which was ruled an incomplete. I don't know how, but the Arizona State fans stormed the field and circled him. I'm thinking, like this is gonna get ugly.
Yeah.
And look, Kalani was very kind in the post game and said, "I'm not mad at the fans. Like, they were excited for their team to get a breakthrough win, but it's just weird to me how it gets nasty with BYU in these road venues out west. I don't get it.
I don't either. Here was what Kalani said about the storming of the field and these wild Arizona State fans.
I hate getting mad at the fans. I mean, they're so excited to get the win. It's two ranked teams that were playing. All we heard is that might be 1 second. And I'm going to cling on to as much hope as I can, and so it's okay. None of our guys are hurt, and so there was no big issue there, and they eventually cleared it, and we were able to get that one play. And so I understand the fans' excitement and energy, and it's okay. Nobody, I didn't think they were too rude to us. They were excited about their win.
Classy response from Kalani. Even Cam Scadaboo's mom went to social media and just spoke highly of Kalani. But, yeah, it's just – BYU, man, they go into these Western environments. Stanford, 2 years ago, they had the halftime performance where they were
mocking some religious stuff. Yeah,
I'll just never understand that. Cougar Nation is brought to you by Central Bank, voted best bank and mortgage in Utah Valley. Visit us online at cbutah.com.
Cougar fans, use this radio station tomorrow morning for important news updates. Listen to Utah's most important radio station tomorrow morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back in. It's Cougar Nation. Matt Baiamonte, Mitch Harper, sponsored by Central Bank. Before we look ahead to Houston, Mitch, any final thoughts on this Arizona State game?
Well, I did want to mention something. Our producer, Nate Slack, did mention to us, he said the UCF fans were great at UCF.
Well,
they were, because he was in the stands, so I'll take Nate's word at it. He was in the crossfire, but you get any student section that's, got success behind them, and the high stakes of that BYU ASU game, it was a little rough. Now, look, no players got hurt, and that's the best thing that happened here. And I just don't think it's necessary to just curse at someone. I hate when the smack talk involves vulgar words, profanity, and questioning someone's religion. I hate that. Just make it about the game. Make it about the team. Like, we beat you. Like, we own. Like, welcome to just something about the game. Don't question people's, faith or what they believe in. I hate that sort of smack talk. But
it makes you wonder too.
That's what comes with, I guess, BYU, and that's why BYU. They're proud of what their belief and their foundation is, and I think that's why BYU is the way that they are. And it means a lot for players when they do go out there and represent BYU, because you got guys like Chase Roberts, Connor Pay. They host a podcast talking about their faith. Like, this means a lot to them. So, and you get a lot of guys that want to be part of that because what it means to be a BYU football player, because it represents you got on the field and you are instantly stereotyped into some sort of lifestyle in some sort of way, and that's not for everyone. But for the ones that want to be a part of that, man, that's a powerful thing, and that's why I think it gets the best out of a lot of BYU teams and players over the years.
I've been very pro storming the field throughout my life, and this was the first time where I felt like maybe it's time to wipe it out.
I'll be interested to see what sort of fine, if any, comes from this.
If any, I mean, if there is no fine, that is pathetic.
Probably
it's
have to have
pathetic.
some sort of fine, yeah.
Absolutely. The leak is a fine in of itself that came from allegedly an ASU staffer.
Yeah, we don't know who it was from.
It wasn't from a BYU person. I'll tell
Not
you
necessarily
that much right now.
not necessarily like a coaching staff or something, but like maybe security. We
Yeah,
don't know.
security or stadium staffer.
Don't know.
Yeah. Don't know, but I feel confident saying it did not come from a BYU personnel.
Yeah, I would assume so.
The security was, for lack of a better term, pathetic during the storming of the field. There was no effort from the security to really effort people off the field. The players were helping get people off the field. It just, there has to be a fine. It was a complete mess at the end of that football game.
And you could tell in the post game, Connor Pay, Chase Roberts, they want a second crack at ASU. So if it's up to BYU players, they're taking care of business against Houston, and they're hoping that Iowa State falls to K-State and ASU takes care of business in the Territorial Cup, and they get a chance at the Sun Devils, because you add in all the stuff that we were just talking about over these last two segments here, and you throw that in Arlington with a shot of the college football playoff and a Big 12 title, whoo, baby, that's going to be as intense as it gets, and I'm here for it. I love that. And
that would be awesome.
And you know what?
That's what I want, Mitch.
BYU fans, it'd be 70% BYU fans. They would totally outdraw. I mean, that stadium on Saturday, BYU fans, I think ASU folks were like, whoa, we didn't realize how much blue you guys gobbled up in September and October would be well before this ticket became a $300 ticket. So BYU fans showed up in big numbers, and I was bummed for that too, that Cougar Nation showed up in such a large quantity and numbers, and that was the performance they got in the first half. It was a little bit discouraging.
Yeah, it was discouraging, and I am a little encouraged, though, that maybe some things were found in the second half. If you can double down on that. I mean, they held Arizona State to 2 yards per carry in the second half, and offensively, they finally started to move the ball with the tempo. I need to see that again against this Houston team.
Complete 60 minutes, and I don't want to see any sort of stretch where they take a foot off the gas. Like, no, full 60 minutes, make a statement, dominate Houston. BYU has not had a dominant blowout performance in a while. You could say maybe the UCF game, but even in that game in the fourth quarter,
it didn't feel dominant.
Risk was it was like the Rizzler. He was just dealing, man. He was awesome. Risk was outstanding in that one. So BYU's they're due for a blowout performance, and I want to see BYU do that coming up on Saturday night against Houston. You and I will be in there at LaVell Stadium covering the game. And
cold and late.
It's going to be, 28 degrees? We'll have to get the official weather report from the KSL weather team, because I hate to speak on this airwaves about weather because I'm not the pro. We got pros on this station that hold it down, but I feel confident in saying it's going to be cold, and that hot chocolate's going to be at a premium. Get that Cougar Tail, get that hot chocolate. That's a late night November special at LES. So enjoy it. Hey, look, it's the last home game of the season. Show up, be proud, and should be a lot of fun.
Great senior class, too. I mean, to pay your respects to Tyler Batty and others, I think it's well worth the trip. Bundle up, too. This is the last home game. Think about this. For 9 months?
Yeah, last home game until Portland State next August.
You treasure these nights.
We'll be in May going, man, I would just give anything to have BYU Portland State. So appreciate these moments. We will talk to you on Saturday, game day, high noon for Cougar Sports Saturday. So talk to you next time here on Cougar Nation.